Hello friends! Today we're going to go over some tips and tricks for propagating, pruning, and protecting jade plants. Stay tuned!
I'm Christopher, the Midwest Man Mountain, and I believe that woodworking and gardening are two of the best ways to be sustainable, creative, and achieve a sense of purpose. Thank you for watching.
We have here what's commonly known as a jade plant. It's some sort of crassula, also known as a lucky penny plant, a money plant, a friendship plant, you name it. This particular plant has been with me for 5 years. It was a gift from my wife, and it started out no bigger than this clipping right here. And over the years, I have put clippings on the ground, and they have all grown around in this space. My goal with this long term, and maybe 25 years, is to have a very large, confluent jade bush almost. So in order to do that, what I'm doing in time is I'm thickening the roots here so that it can support tall structure. But to do that, you have to prune it. So let's prune. Before we start pruning, let's talk about this particular plant and go over a couple stories. I live in Gardening Zone 5A in Wisconsin, United States. And in the winter time, you know, it drops down below zero for a long time. But in the summer, it's nice and warm, 70s, 80s, and some days in the 90s. In the spring and summer, I have this plant outside. It loves the natural sunlight, and it is mature enough that it can deal with whatever water naturally comes down from the rain. So I let it go crazy. And truly, in the 3 hottest months of the summertime, this grows gangbusters. Right now, we're in a dormant state, but you can still tell a couple things about this jade plant. First off, let's turn it. You note new growth is all going in this direction. That's phototropism, bending towards the light. This is facing a window that must be over here normally, and that's fun. As I've said before, my goal with this plant is to create a large, structurally sound, confluent plant in maybe 20 years. So I'm going to cut off, let's take a look, cut off sections like this that are going to go out and eventually droop down below the plant. So think up and in, those are the things we want to keep, and out and down, in my case, I'm going to cut them off. And today all I'm using is a simple pruning shears, like so. For this particular plant of jade, it doesn't necessarily matter where I cut it. I don't have to cut it at a particular node or apex. I'm just going to go. So without further ado, let's get cutting. All right, now that the plant has all of the droopy parts cut off, I'm going to go to a thicker section like so, and I'm going to thin it out so that sunlight can get deep down and nourish the plant all over. Well, this sure looks a lot different, doesn't it? I've got to admit, every time I do this still, I get nervous and think, oh no, am I hurting my jade plant? It's been with me so long, I don't want to do any damage. But in truth, by trimming it and encouraging growth in the direction that you want, you're doing it a favor. I'm giving it lots of sunlight. I'm giving it opportunities to grow up instead of growing out. I'm doing exactly what I want for the jade, and it is thriving. It might look sparse now, but remember, in just a couple of weeks' time, there's going to be a lot of light green new growth everywhere on the plant, like you see here and here and here, all along the parts that were trimmed up. And don't worry about the open and exposed ends, like so. What's going to happen is the plant is going to naturally feel that it's been damaged, almost like it had an infection, and it's going to stop sending nutrients to this area. This is going to harden off and get woody, and it probably will just fall off. That is very, very common, so you have nothing to worry about. And wow, look at all of these clippings. I've got a mini forest, a couple trees right here below me. And you know what? We're going to be able to use these to propagate and start brand new plants from these clippings here. So nothing has to go to waste if we don't want it to. I have here 2 small pots that I've filled up with cactus palm citrus potting mix. Great for succulents. It's light and airy, and it doesn't retain too much moisture, so it's good for water control because succulents will naturally retain their moisture. Now, for my 2 methods of propagation, now mind you, there are multiple methods, but I am going to pick the thickest base, which happens to be this one. And then I'm going to find some of the leaves that have dropped. So let's take a look. This is from a different species. Can you tell? Different variety right there. But take a look at that. That, right here, is a root that's starting to form. Just by being on the ground, these plants will naturally start to root. And when this comes in contact with the soil, it will create a legitimate root system and start growing. So that's what we're going to do with some of the petals from this particular plant. Our first method here is going to be with this big guy. I am going to just create a hole here using my pinky finger and bury this nice and deep down. I don't want it to be touching the ground, but I do need to make it relatively firm enough to stay upright. Once you have it feeling comfortable, fill it in with more soil, lightly pack, and there we have it. Now, this method has worked for me on countless occasions. Usually this time of year when I do my trimming, I replant up to 6 different smaller plants, and I give them as gifts at Christmas time in nice little clay pots, and they're maybe twice the size of this, having grown nicely. This will wilt for a little while. It will wither. It might turn purple in this particular case, but after 6 to 8 weeks, it's going to perk up once the root system forms. So don't be too discouraged if it doesn't look good for the first few months. The second method that we're going to be using is propagation from individual leaflets. So let's get you over to take a look at the soil and show you what I mean. I have picked 3 of the bigger ones, and on the bottom here, where they came off the actual jade plant, I am just going to gently stick them underneath the soil, no more than 2 or 3 millimeters. Now, there are things that you can do to encourage the growth. You can use root growth hormone, for example. But I tend to plant 3 or 4 little leaflets, and I have a success rate of maybe 30%. And for me, that's quite fine. Now, this method takes much longer. Before I get any proper growth on this, it's going to be about 6 months, but I've got time. The last bit of information that I have for jade plants has to do with protection. Let's take a look at some of these clippings. I have for a while had an infestation of mealybugs. If I zoom in, sorry if that takes out of focus, you can see right there is one of the culprits. Let's zoom. Isn't he disgusting? I just cannot stand them. What happens with mealybugs is you get one bug and it'll take over your entire plant. Now, in great numbers they cause a lot of harm. What they'll do is they will lay nest sacs, and you can see that fuzzy thing right there underneath your nodes. And over time, those sacs will sap away some of the energy from the plant, and they tend to do that at points that weaken the plant. So if there's a strong wind outside, you're going to knock off a good chunk of your plant. And also, they just look gross. So in order to get rid of them, what I'm going to do is I am going to be using rubbing alcohol. I have some 70% isopropyl alcohol, and I do 2 things. First, I take a Q-tip and I get it lubed up with rubbing alcohol, and I rub each and every leaf, trying to get off all of the individual mealybugs. And then when I'm done, I'm actually going to spray the entire plant. Now, there are multiple schools of thought on this. Some people think that it's bad to spray a jade plant because it reacts differently than an orchid does. However, I have been doing this for years, and in my experience, by diluting the rubbing alcohol down maybe 50%, it takes care of my mealybug infestation, and it doesn't harm my plant for the long run. Now that I've taken my Q-tip with rubbing alcohol to the plant to get rid of every creepy crawly mealybug that I can see with my eyes, I'm going to hopefully get the rest and their eggs with this 50-50 rubbing alcohol water solution. I'm going to do this liberally, spray it every 3 days for the next month, and hopefully by the end of March it'll be warm enough for me to take this outside, hose it down nice and vigorously, and change the top layer of soil to get rid of anything that might be living in the soil or on the plants, and leave it outside, and it will do very well. All right, now I'll let this sit and air dry for about an hour, and then I'm going to give it a good watering just so it can have some food, basically. After all of this rough treatment, the plant will be very happy. And in a couple of weeks, we'll come back and take a look. You'll have to stay tuned for that vlog, and you can see how this is growing and how our cuttings are faring, and you'll see that they're doing very well. And that's that. I hope you've gotten a couple tips and tricks in this video today. Do you take care of jade plants already? If so, why don't you leave us another tip in the comment section below, and we'll be sure to pin that so others can benefit from the information as well. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. While you're here, I hope you'll subscribe. There's hundreds of videos. You're bound to like something. And there's a Patreon page if you'd like to contribute directly to what you see. Until next time, bye!